My name is Brian Diehl, and I'm an admissions rep for Gordon-Conwell, and I've got my associate Jordan here as well. And we're here to talk this evening about counseling, and specifically talking about this idea of feeling called and kind of what our options that we as a seminary have, and kind of talking how that integrates into time at school and off past school. And so we're joined this evening by Dr. Karen Mason, who's going to get to share a little bit. And then we've got a fun panel of alumni, and I think it's going to be good. So with that said, I'm going to tip us off here, and we're going to just talk a little bit about what degrees we actually offer here at Gordon-Conwell, on these topics, and then we'll kind of move from there on to the next part. We're going to end this evening with a question and answer session, which we've done in all our other versions of this series. And so if you have any questions, you can send them to me in chat, and then I will we'll kind of handle those later. So let's get started here. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully these slides don't cycle through rapidly. Okay. So yeah, we have at Gordon-Conwell, we have a number of different paths that can bring you into a career in the field of counseling. Specifically, we have two that really are honed in on that, and that is our Master of Arts in Counseling that is offered at the Hamilton campus, and then we have a Master of Arts in Christian Counseling, and I'm just realizing that I have not updated the text after that, and that is a little less clear. But they are very similar degrees. The big difference is that one is just a little bit shorter and is offered in Charlotte, and the other one is offered in Hamilton. And they're a little bit different, and that has a little bit to do with specifically where they're offered and the accreditation associated with each one. But they are both incredibly solid programs, and do their job training counselors. We also have a Master of Arts in Practical Ministry, or in Christian Ministry, which is sort of a 2-year practical degree. And that has the ability to be sort of customized with concentrations. And so there is the potential for a lay counseling track that can be put together with that, if that's something that you're interested in. But in terms of the technical piece of these two degrees, here is the Master of Arts in Counseling, and you can see one of the things that makes this degree unique at a Christian seminary is that we have a focus on biblical studies and Christian thought that become an integrative piece of how counseling is approached. And so those are some of the core building blocks, and then there is room for sort of customization of electives and things in terms of what you take. And there's also a strong practical piece that's built into this degree, so that you actually can test out what you're learning in the classroom. The Master of Arts in Christian Counseling is very similar. It's just a little bit more condensed, yeah, that is run out of the Charlotte campus. And so, yeah, there's some similarities and there's some differences, but on the whole, they're very much sibling degrees. And so, yeah, these are all available online. If you want to look at our degrees pages, we can put the link in chat here if you are unfamiliar, and we'd be more than happy to kind of talk about the distinctions with you. I mean, obviously, if you're here in this webinar, you're familiar at least with the concept of these things. So we'd be happy to walk you through those details. So that's sort of the dry technical piece here. but I think it's far more important to kind of understand the heart behind and the drive that kind of walks through these classes. And so to give us that, I'm going to pass over the floor to Dr. Mason, and we'll hear what she has to say about that.
Well, hey, I just want to say welcome to all of you. We're just so happy for your interest in the counseling programs here at Gordon-Conwell, and glad to try to answer as many questions as possible. So I'm the director of the Hamilton Counseling Program, and one of the biggest difference, by the way, is the licensing requirements in North Carolina, where our Charlotte program is located, and in Massachusetts, where the South Hamilton program is located. And we are a 60 counseling hour program, and that's why the difference in the hours it shows up that way. So our state requires you to complete 60 hours in the counseling area. And there are many states in the United States that require that. So it's always worth your while to go check your licensing requirements in the state where you plan to end up, and see how many of the hours that you need to complete have to be in the counseling arena specifically. Now, as Brian said, the heart of these programs is integration with Bible and theology. So, we love to help people really think about how counseling is really a practical ministry, a practical Christian ministry. And how thinking about counseling, even though we're preparing you to deliver services in whatever format you choose to focus on down the road, we want to make sure that you are well prepared biblically and theologically for thinking about this ministry from that perspective. So, in both of these programs, either the Charlotte MACC program or the MACO program in Hamilton, you're going to get that very important Bible theology foundation that really helps you really think about this ministry of counseling from a biblical and theological perspective. Now, the other difference, just to nuance a little bit what Brian said, you're absolutely right, Brian. Right now, we are online because of COVID, but we are, the Massachusetts program is a residential program. And so as soon as COVID goes away, we're going to be going back to being a residential program, whereas the MACC program in Charlotte is a hybrid program. So, that's a distinction between the two programs. So, one of the things that's important to know about our program, and it's the case for the MACC program as well, is that we prepare you to become licensed as professional counselors, or in both states, by the way, that person, a professional counselor, is actually called a licensed mental health counselor. So we're going to prepare you to be a licensed mental health counselor. But I'd say about half of our graduates choose not to pursue the licensing route and actually work in church settings or other kind of ministry settings. So just kind of be aware of the fact that we're preparing you for a licensure in whatever context you might find yourself in whatever context God is calling you towards. And that could be in secular agencies where licensure is extremely important. Hey, I see Will. Hi, Will. Or you might be called to serve in the ministry of counseling in a church setting or a parachurch kind of a setting. So what we want to do is prepare you to do what God has called you to do. And that's really the heart of this program. So we want to help you really be prepared for whatever God calls you to do, and really think about counseling biblically and theologically. So just really happy to see my former students, Ann and Will, and Also, just really looking forward to answering any questions you might have about the program.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Mason. All right. So yeah, we've got two alumni that have gone through this program here, and we're going to give it over to Ann Harrington first. And yeah, Ann, if you could just share a little bit about your experience at Gordon-Conwell and life beyond, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So my path into the counseling program was a little less direct than I think a lot of people at Gordon-Conwell's. I started out in the MDiv and did my mentored ministry with a prison ministry. And basically at the end of that internship, realized I really like this work and I don't need more preaching classes. I need more counseling skills. So that was my path into the counseling program. I graduated in 2017 and did my internship and practicum at Salem High School, which I didn't necessarily want to work with teens, but it ended up being great exposure and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. And then I moved back to Montana, which is where I'm from, and got a job working at a therapeutic group home for teens, so Teens Again. And I was there for about 2 years, just under 2 years. And I think like reflecting, it's interesting because I think it's easy like when you're in a program to be frustrated or whatever by the ways that you think it lacks. But then when I got out into the world of counseling, I realized like how vastly better prepared I was than my peers. So I'm really actually very grateful for that. I think like my grasp of the DSM was far superior. Even just my exposure to like broad clinical modalities, like I had a grasp on what different theoretical orientations were, where they came from and what they're for and how they're best used. So yeah, those were really the strengths for me. And then as well as actually, I'm from like Montana, like I said, and at any given point, like a third to half of my clients were Native American. And I was pleasantly surprised by how well my education prepared me for multicultural counseling. So yeah, those are some strengths from my perspective, as well as even just beyond the clinical aspects. I really felt like, and still feel like, the counseling program addressed questions of suffering in a way that like we just have to be able to deal with as clinicians, or in ministry period, like to be able to wrestle honestly with those things. And Dr. Mason is great at engaging on that stuff, I can tell you from experience. All the professors are that I've had. So, and then also just understanding human beings as holistic beings. So that like the Hebrew concept of the soul, it's not like some disembodied spirit within our bodies, it's the whole person. And I think that's like sort of one of the, for me at least, I felt like that came through as like one of the foundational understandings of people within the program. So yeah, that's kind of the basic overview. So after my job at the group home, I was pretty burnt out. And as you can imagine, there's like, it's an intense job. It can be, yeah. And for a lot of people, I think turnover, I think it's something like 2 years is pretty average for jobs like that. So I took about a year off and have just been doing other things since then. But I'm stepping back into the counseling world now. I'm working on transferring my license from Montana back to Massachusetts, where I'm living again. And then I've also actually been using my degree in ministry. I started an anxiety and depression support group at my church this last year, and that's been going fantastic. And it's honestly the best ministry I've ever done, most rewarding, and just really seeing God at work there. So yeah, that's me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And our other alumni who's joining us is Will Halsey. So I'm going to just pass it right over.
Thanks. I think for me, coming to Gordon-Conwell was very much a career move as much as it was a faith move, in the sense of like this step is an exploratory phase for me as well. And so coming into the program, having not been in Christian education before, it was a huge step on those two paths for me. And so, I would say the experience of Gordon-Conwell is very much a transformative one if you allow it to be, and you're not just kind of there like checking the box. And I would say the classes that stood out to me were group process, specifically because of just the power of group therapy. You get to experience it, you get to sit in it. I think that, there's a number of the courses that I could rattle off, but that is one that really comes to mind. And just again, a lot of the assignments and the work that we did was reflective. And so we're thinking about ourselves, and we're also thinking about the people that we're going to serve, and just the duality of the program and that nature, to me, was immensely helpful. And then the kind of connection between the psychological and the spiritual, I think, is a conversation that was immensely helpful, especially as you go out into your internship and practicum, especially if it's a secular site, which I worked at Leahy, which is the big provider here in the area. And, there's like a handful of us who come from Gordon-Conwell to it. And we're all, we're the only basically like Christians in the place. And so, you're just learning from a very different perspective, as opposed to, say, if you're working within a church or within a missional context. And so my practicum and internship were both with Leahy, and then I worked with them after graduation, and basically worked with them until I got licensed. And now I'm in group private practice. I've been doing that for about a year. But the experience itself with Leahy was like, I got to work in a prison, got to work substance groups, got to work art therapy groups, trauma groups, all ages, all reasons. So really, you're just getting so much experience. But the time at Gordon-Conwell really kind of lays all the foundation for that. And I feel like as a clinician, when you go out into the world from grad school, you have to have a base that you draw from. Otherwise, it's burnout city. You're constantly giving, just as you are in any context of mission, you're giving. And so having the kind of mindset of where you draw from and how to replenish, I think, was something that also really kind of came away from the time at Gordon-Conwell, just as far as the inner reflection and things like that. So yeah, I'm in group practice now, and that's my primary work. I am currently in talks with a ministry that is called Serving Leaders, and they are primarily based in the Philadelphia area, but they are their whole work is working with pastors and church leadership and providing counseling to them and the infrastructure of the church. So I'm excited for that, because I've always had a heart for working within the church. And so I've kind of done my work in the trenches out here, and I'm kind of looking forward to making that next step.
Sweet. Thank you so much. All right. Well, so what we're going to do now is we're going to shift over into question and answer time. And I have questions that were submitted as people signed up. But if you have questions that have come up while we've been in this session, or that come up as people are talking, just shoot me a message here in Zoom, and I'll ask as time allows. So also, our panelists, you can feel free to answer if you feel that it is relevant to you and that you have an answer. You can also feel free to not answer as you feel called. If nobody answers, I'm going to pick a panelist. So, okay. So this one is probably more for Dr. Mason than anyone else, and this is a question that I don't understand. So there it is. What is the difference between, I don't even know how you would pronounce this acronym. It's COAMFTE and KCREP.
Yeah, COAMFTA and KCREP. Yeah, so thank you for the question, because I meant to say we are KCREP accredited, and so is, by the way, the MACC program. So we're both of the programs are. The big difference is that KCREP is focused on counseling and helping students develop a counselor identity. Now, by the way, Will and Ann, you guys probably worked with families, right? And if you were working with adolescents, you were working with their families as well, right? So counselors can work with families. So that's not the fact that we're a KCREP accredited program and preparing you to become a counselor doesn't mean you can't work with families. But CLAMFTA is very specifically an accreditation for programs that prepare you to become a marriage and family therapist. All right, so CLAMFTA is the accreditation for those sorts of programs. We are accredited by KCREP, which is a counseling accreditation, counseling program accreditation. And you can still work with families even if you get licensed as a mental health counselor. So the distinction is really in the development of your professional identity. It doesn't mean you can't work with families if you go to a KCREP accredited program and become a licensed mental health counselor.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This might be a good question for our panelists, or for our alumni, is how does the process of accreditation work after you've graduated the seminary?
The process of licensing, you mean?
Or that's what I mean. Yes, thank you. Licensure, once you have graduated.
I will say for the state of Massachusetts and Sherry, who kind of is just all things magical about the counseling program. She's the person to go to on any questions you might have about licensure in many different states, because she has worked with many different students about each state has its own requirements, which makes it really confusing. Even in the process of looking into licensure in other states, as I'm sure Anne has also seen and had to deal with, is that you'll see all these different letters as far as, well, this state, you're an LPC, in this state, you're an LMHC, and there's basically three non-PhD licensure routes: LMFT, which is licensed marriage and family therapist, and then you have the LPC, LMHC, and then there's a licensed social worker. For the Gordon-Conwell program, we are, at least in my up-to-date knowledge of it, we're looking at the marriage and family and the LMHC route here in Massachusetts. And if you go to any other state, I think as far as transferability, I found that LMFT is more transferable than LMHC, which is the state's like mental health counselor. And correct me if I'm wrong for Anne or Dr. Mason if you know otherwise, but just in looking about it, portability, if you're looking to move or go from state to state, then the LMFT tends to allow you to do just about the same, but with more portability.
Yeah, it's as Will you're pointing out, it differs by state. Every state has its mental health law, and part of that mental health law is, what it takes to get licensed in that state, which differs by state. So one of the issues with portability, by the way, is something that KCREP is working on. And if you graduate from a KCREP accredited program, they really are working hard on developing portability between states. So what you said, Will, could change in the very near future.
Fantastic.
If KCREP is successful, and I know they're working hard on developing portability for LPC or LMHC. Now you can graduate from our MACO program or the MACC program in Charlotte, go to a state that's an LPC state and get licensed as an LPC, a licensed professional counselor. I'm licensed in Colorado and in Massachusetts. In Colorado, I'm an LPC. So it just kind of depends on what state you end up going to as far as what your licensure is going to look like. The other thing I'll say is that we provide you with all the coursework to be able to become an LMFT. You can graduate from our program if you use all your electives to take the marriage and family coursework and you can get licensed as an LMFT if you'd like to. So but as you know, as has been pointed out, this is different for each state. It's really important to check out your state's licensure requirements. And as Will pointed out, Sherry is the magician when it comes to helping you get licensed. So she can help you with some thoughts if you need some thoughts about how do I get more information about my state's licensure process.
And just one thing to add is thinking about the time you're considering giving to this process. Post grad, you're looking at basically 2 years of non-licensed work towards your license, depending on the state. Here in Massachusetts, it's 3,500 hours. I forget what the actual number is, but that if you're working full time, that's going to be at minimum, I think, about 2 years.
And just to jump on that, is that license work, that's not pro bono or anything. You could still get paid to do that, right?
Yes, you do, but you get paid more when you're licensed.
And you get to pick where you're going to work once you get licensed. There's, before you're licensed, you have a tendency to work in agencies. Would you say that, Will and Ann? Whereas once you get licensed, you're free to move about the country.
Yeah, and you typically, when you're unlicensed, you're working under someone who's supervising you because they have the license that you're working under. And so one of the things you might want to consider when thinking about the program is also thinking about, hey, is there a place I'd love to kind of learn in? Is there a place I'd like to be? Is there a person I'd like to be mentored by? Because you're going to be looking for who has a license that I can practice under if they're willing. And typically the agencies are the most happy to, because they want you to come in and help them out and pay you for it.
Sweet. And then a follow-up to that follow-up is it more strategic, or are there pluses and minuses to going the licensure route or to pursuing work with sort of like Christian organizations without licensure involved in that?
Could you just say the first part of the sentence, Brian?
Yeah. So what are the pros and cons or the distinctions between going licensure route for counseling or for going sort of work within churches or Christian ministries without the licensure piece?
Boy, I really think that relates to your calling. I don't think there's a strategy there as much as there's a calling. And I mean, I'd be curious, Will and Ann, what your thoughts are. And Ann, you're moving back into ministry, so.
Yeah, sure. The distinctions, the most glaring distinctions anyway, are obviously the type of work you're doing. So in a clinical role, you are working as a clinical counselor. In a ministry role, that's not recommended for ethical reasons. So even like with this support group that I'm running, we're very clear that it's more of a spiritual formation group and like community support group than it's not a counseling group. And we really encourage everyone that's in it to be in therapy. So all that to say, yeah, there's maybe some overlap at times, but it's different clientele. So that's actually another significant difference. I had very, very few Christian clients when I was working at the mental health agency at the group home. And if you're working in ministry, obviously that's going to be most of who you're interacting with. So yeah, those would be the big ones that stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a lot of work out there for master's level clinicians. I think something to take into consideration as well as call is this job going to be something that you are looking to support your family or yourself with? If so, licensure can provide you with a higher level or just the opportunity to say, work in ministry and have private practice on the side, or, like you have more options in that way. But that being said, it's not necessary. I've seen a lot of jobs out there that are master's level only.
Perfect. So I've got a couple questions in relation to the MDiv Mako combo route and what that looks like, and how that actually looks like in terms of time and going through the coursework.
That I would say that about 20% of our students are actually Mako MDiv students. And I would say that what I keep hearing from these students is that GCTS has really thought through how to structure that dual degree. And I wish I could talk more with you about the technical aspects of that, but I actually don't know. But I know our registrar knows. And Brian, you might know more than I do. I just know that this is a really important dual degree, for our students. A good number of our students are dual MDiv Mako. And I can tell you the one thing is that it is a 4-year degree. So, you just want to come in with a strong sense of call that that's the direction that you want to take. And were you dual or were you just MDiv? And then I don't want to say just MDiv, but were you MDiv only and then you switched to Mako only?
I ended up doing Mako and MAR. So I basically gotten to the point in my MDiv where I had almost enough credits to have the MAR. So I just rolled them over into that.
Yeah, we have so many people who are dual degree. And part of the reason is that once you do, the 24 Bible theology credits, you are, you do have quite a number of Bible theology credits.
I would encourage it. I only went Mako and I wished I had done both.
Oh, really? Why do you wish, Will?
I think that, hoping to move into a ministry setting, I know that it would be so much more helpful just to have, it's honestly like two parts of the brain, right? You've got all of your counseling and then you have all the theological, and together, I think that is the best way to speak to the soul, because you really are speaking about those two separate pieces. And so I think that if I could, I'd go back just to have a better understanding, to be able to speak from a place of knowing, as opposed to, my own kind of research that I'm doing on the side. And I think that it's definitely, if you're heading into ministry and you're interested in that, a very, very helpful part of being in practice.
Now, Will, can you just talk about those 24 credits? Was that a good start or?
Oh, absolutely. It whet the appetite for sure. And I think that they're definitely, it's inspiring along the way, and it's helpful to have, something different just besides counseling courses, because here you are in a seminary, and to have the access to the professors and all of the different, like the information, the ability to learn in that way, it's like a beautiful side benefit of getting the Mako, is that you also get to have that too. But yeah.
Thanks. Brian, who do they talk to if they want to know more about that Mako MDiv? Where do they get that sheet of paper that gives the list of courses?
Well, at present, we have a little bit of a black hole on our website, and so I am so sorry if you have gone looking and found that black hole. But all you have to do is email Jordan or myself, and if you have not already been in communication with us, you can email us at brian@gcts.edu or jordan@gcts.edu, and it will come to us, and we can help connect you with that. And we'd be happy to do that. We have an Mako MDiv in my household, but that's because my wife and I did separate degrees, and so I can't really speak to how they, go together, other than we're a good couple. But that's, I think that's my commentary. Okay, let's go on to the next question. And Yeah, I think this is a fun one. The question is, what is the most gratifying part of being a counselor?
Helping people. Helping people. What would you guys say, Anne and Will?
And you first.
I think like a couple of times I've been able to do at my job, I'd been able to do follow-up assessments on kids that I'd had in the group home like 6 months to a year out. And yeah, it was really awesome to see them still doing well. I mean, it's one thing to watch gains made in therapy, but then to see people thriving after that is just, it's the best. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like seeing people make connections. Specifically coming to mind for me is working at Leahy. There's a what they call Iop Intensive Outpatient. It's a daily substance use group for people who are coming out of like detox, hospital, jail, who have a substance use disorder, and they're getting treatment for the first time. And so you're there just sitting with them and walking with them through the very, very early stages of their sobriety. And just to see them, being able to sit and not feel judged and to try to learn some of the stuff, it was extremely gratifying, especially for people who have felt so shamed and pretty much social outcasts because of something that they can't help. That to sit there in the room with them and give them space and respect them and have them see how they react to that. It was just a wonderful experience.
Great. All right. So this one, the question is if we could speak to the residential portion of Gordon-Conwell, and I think specifically talking about counseling degrees, and sort of whether or not there are any sort of cohorts or communal grouping within the counseling program in that setting.
Yeah, we have not done cohorts per se. Cohorts would be where you have to go through the program with your fellow students, and one of the reasons we haven't yet, and I can tell you we've sure talked a lot about it, but one of the reasons we haven't is that we do have people who are, for instance, MDiv MACO, who are trying to balance two different degrees, and so that creates some challenges the cohort model would be challenging for those folks. But what I would say, and I'll be interested in what Anne and Will have to say, is the MACO degree, I think, is a very I think the MACO students just are a wonderful community. I think, and of course, I might say it's because we have wonderful students, but I think it's also because, and Will, you mentioned this, the classes are very reflectively oriented, but a lot of that reflection in those classes happen in small group work. There's an awful lot of small group work.
Yeah.
And I think that small group work just creates that community. So, so I would say it's a very communal degree. It's not a cohort degree, but it's very communal.
I would say, especially since, I mean, in your first classes, you have your triads where someone's observing, someone's the client, someone is the counselor, and you're sitting there practicing. You're really it's those like icebreakers, but the 10th degree. So you're all getting to really know each other right off the bat. And then in a lot of the classes, and specifically Dr. Mason and I'm remembering the assessments that we worked on, you're kind of interviewing your fellow classmate and using their life and doing the assessments with them. And so you have the opportunity to really get to know people. And so and just also to add to that, the use of prayer in class, in the different settings, also to me adds to that. And then also there's a lot of ways to get connected on campus just as far as getting involved. Like both Ann and I were on the kind of student government. And so I think it is definitely one of those places that the more you put yourself out there, I think there's more opportunities for you to get to know folks. But it definitely is something that takes your initiative.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, education is always whatever you put into it, you will get out of it. But I would also add group process is another place where those connections are made. And I'm not sure, is it required for everyone, Dr. Mason, or just for, okay. Yeah, so if you do the program, you will take group process, and it can get real pretty fast. But in, a really great way. And I am still connected to everyone that was in my group for group process. And then also when you're doing your internship and practicum, you have professional seminar. So you meet once a week with a professor and the same group of people, and you basically staff your cases. And that also can be really, really great for connecting people. And I can remember in particular, in one of my professional seminars, one of the women was just really struggling with, she's a Black woman and was struggling with some racial dynamics in her workplace, and just like our group being able to come around her and pray for her and be supportive to her in a way that it just felt like this is what it looks like to be the body of Christ and to support each other. So, but yeah, you have to take the steps to do it. It doesn't necessarily happen automatically, but the avenues are there if you're willing to take them. So.
Well, and I was going to say, Anne, also, you did OMP, right? That's where you worked in the prison.
Yep.
And yeah, so I mean, and there's, did either of you do Pierce Discipleship Center, where you did soul care groups, or, yeah, there's just all kinds of other opportunities in addition to the MACO program to get connected with people.
Great answers. So this question is, are there any discernible trends in the students that come to counseling programs at Gordon-Conwell? So yeah, I don't know if you could read that. Is it changing over time, or are there discernible characteristics of students that gravitate towards the program?
I would say, and I'll brag on Ann and Will here, and just all of our students, that the thing that has struck me the most about our students is just how hard they work. And I think they work hard because they have a vision of where they're going, even if they don't know exactly where they're going to end up. Is it's going to be church ministry, or am I going to get licensed and work in an agency? Even if they don't know the particulars of it, they just have a sense, I think, of wanting to soak up as much as they can in order to be prepared to do what God's called them to do. So I don't think this is a trend, because I've seen this the whole 14 years I've been here. Just the hard work of the students in order to prepare themselves as much as possible. So I would say, if there's any kind of characteristic for me in my mind of GCTS students, it's that.
I would say, just as an observation during my time there, I imagine this to be true over time, is that it has consistently been multi-generational and diverse.
Very diverse. People from all over the world.
Yeah, which is really cool.
I would add to that, particularly in the MACO program. I think there's a higher EQ maybe than the general population. And also and I was thinking about this actually in the last question. I don't know that I ever asked someone in the MACO program, just like greeting them, how they were doing, and just got a bland fine. Like, they always had a precise and honest answer like an accurate answer for how they were feeling. And I just think that that's really refreshing, that it's a pretty reflective group of people for the most part. So.
Perfect. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a general trend in terms of like Myers-Briggs configuration, right? Counseling students.
Well, that's what they say. But I have to say, yeah, because I teach the career counseling class, so I get to read all these students' results on the Myers-Briggs, and you could make the argument there's an awful lot of ENFPs in there, but let me tell you, I mean, everybody's represented. So, not being an ENFP myself, I think it's very important to say there's room for everybody.
Fantastic. So we've got a predominantly residential program in Hamilton, and we've got a hybrid model in Charlotte. Is there any sort of future for a fully online counseling degree? And and why, either way?
There's definitely discussions about that. The challenge for us at this point in time is that we are accredited as a residential program, and Charlotte is accredited as a hybrid program. And so in order to make that change, we would have to go through a process of getting approved by KCREP in order to make that change. So, right now, I think we're all trying to get through this pandemic where we actually are. We offer, some of our classes are just fully in person. Some, probably the majority of our classes are what's called digital live, which is you can either, up to 21 people can be in person and the others are on Zoom. And you could switch back and forth between the classroom and Zoom. And then there are a few of the classes that are Zoom only. But once we're through the pandemic, we are accredited as a residential program, and Charlotte is accredited as a hybrid program. So we're all going to have to, at that point in time, think about what that means for us now that we know how to do online. But we are not accredited that way right now. We have the permission, the full permission of KCREP to do what we're doing right now because of the pandemic.
I love the joys of life in pandemic.
Yep.
Dr. Mason, perhaps you could just maybe flesh out a little bit about what the hybrid look of the Charlotte campuses and what that entails in terms of actual feet on the campus.
Yes, I would love to, but I'm not going to do it justice. But I know that in theory that some of their classes some portions of their classes are face to face, and then the rest of the class is online. And they also are primarily evenings and weekends. So because we're residential, and this isn't the case necessarily now, but most of our classes are during the day. Most of the classes in Charlotte are either evening or weekend. So it kind of depends. Because we're both KCREP accredited, there are possibilities of taking electives with Charlotte students have taken our classes. Our students have taken Charlotte classes now that we're in the midst of this pandemic and we can all be online. But in order to get the full story, you should contact Dr. Pam Davis, and she will give you the full story on what hybrid actually means for them. And there's a lot of good information, by the way, on the website. So Dr. Davis has a little video, and there's lots of good information there too.
And unfortunately, we weren't able to have Dr. Davis this evening, but we are going to have a full hour with Dr. Davis just any question you want to ask her first Tuesday of next month. So stay posted for emails about that. And then, yeah, you can ask her all the questions you want about it. All right. Once again, we have hit the end of our hour. Panelists, if there's any last thoughts you'd like to leave, here's an opportunity. And if not, I'll close us in prayer.
Yeah, I'll just add that I'm actually on sabbatical this semester. So if you do have questions, the best person to get a hold of is Sherry Messina. After Brian and Jordan, Sherry Messina is the MAKO program administrator. Will has already spoken highly of Sherry. So S. Messina. I'll chat that to everybody, but Sherry would be the right person to talk to if you have further questions about the MAKO program. And she would love to talk to you, and just really encourage all of you to reach out and ask any questions that you might have. Just glad to all have you on this Zoom call tonight.
Thank
Okay. Well, let
Thank
me
you for your time.
let me just quick close us in prayer, and then yeah, we'll say goodnight. Heavenly Father, we thank you for a chance to just spend time together and hear about this program and this school, and not just about what it is in theory, but what it is in actuality, and how that actually prepares individuals for ministry. And Lord, that's what we are here for, is to serve you and to be a light in a dark world, and the kingdom in and amongst the people around us. And so, Lord, we pray that would be what we continue to do, that we would continue to draw nearer to you and learn more about how to live as your people. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time.